Emily, is Grandpa behaving himself? Oh, yes. Well, kind of. Injuring his leg. Old people can be such a nuisance. I wish they'd think about those of us who have to take care of them. Patricia, that's not a nice way to say it. It's fine. He's already declining quite a bit. I can't handle the fuss of old people, but you're used to it, so you'll be fine. The other day, my husband's grandfather Michael fell in the garden and injured his leg. It's not a serious injury, but he's already 82 years old. Because of his age, we're having him rest in bed just to be safe so it doesn't get worse. My mother-in-law won't even go near him, let alone take care of him. I'm Emily, 30 years old. I married 3 years ago and live with my husband Daniel's family. My husband was my boss at the company where I worked, a company founded by his grandfather. When I joined 8 years ago, my father-in-law was already the president, and my grandfather-in-law was the chairman. But back then, the grandfather was still handling all the important tasks and responsibilities of the company. 2 years ago, when Grandpa turned 80, he remained chairman, but handed over most of the public duties to my father-in-law. Michael, you've worked hard all this time. Now leave the company matters to Christopher and take it easy. My mother-in-law said with a smile, but her words sounded sarcastic to me. Grandfather-in-law is a bit stubborn, but a fair and kind person with a good reputation. In contrast, my father-in-law seems somewhat immature, never expressing his opinions clearly and utterly unreliable compared to Grandpa. And he always does whatever my mother-in-law says. My grandmother-in-law has already passed away, and I never met her. My husband and I started dating when we worked together on the same product planning team 3 years after I joined the company. My husband, who was energetically leading the team, seemed reliable to me, though a bit self-righteous. Maybe I felt that way because I lost my father early and grew up with just my mother. My mother also passed away from illness 2 years ago, and now I have no family other than my in-laws. Shortly after I got married, my mother fell ill and needed care, so I quit my job to take care of her. The fact that my husband's family didn't object was probably due to a single comment from Grandpa. It's only natural to take care of the mother who raised you alone. Don't worry and take good care of her. Thanks to that, I was able to be by my mother's side every day for a year without financial worries until she passed away. My mother-in-law seemed a bit dissatisfied, but I was truly grateful. However, since Grandpa handed over the company to my father-in-law, everyone's attitudes towards him has gradually changed. They no longer listen to his opinions as much. And I can't shake the feeling that they're treating him carelessly. At first, I thought it was just my imagination, but watching my mother-in-law and husband's behavior, I can't help but feel that way. My father-in-law's attitude is non-committal, but it feels like he's ignoring Grandpa, as if he's no longer needed since he's practically retired. Watching my in-laws' behavior, I feel somewhat angry. Hey, don't you think your attitude, Patricia, and yours too, is a bit cold towards Grandpa? So what's the big deal? Grandpa tries to talk to you and you barely respond. You don't even try to help him. Like I have time to deal with old people. You can take care of Grandpa. You're the one with the free time. You don't have to talk like that. Quiet. I'm tired from work. Don't nag me about unnecessary things. This is how it goes. No matter what I say, they won't listen to me. My grandfather-in-law doesn't say anything to his family about this. Now I'm the only one who talks to my grandfather-in-law at home. Grandpa, the weather is nice today. Shall we go for a little walk outside? Your leg seems to be healing well, and I think it will be good rehabilitation. Thank you. Let's go out for a bit then. When the two of us went to the park, there were several families with children playing around. My grandfather-in-law looked at the scene with joy.
Christopher and Daniel had times like that too.
Grandpa?
I was busy with work and couldn't take care of the children much. Maybe that's why I couldn't raise Christopher and Daniel properly.
My grandfather-in-law said with a slightly sad face, almost like he was talking to himself. Christopher is my father-in-law, and Daniel is my husband. I think about how everyone can be kinder to my grandfather-in-law, but I can't come up with a good idea. But then, my in-laws suggested building a house for my grandfather-in-law. This house is over 50 years old, right? The layout is bad. It's hard to use, but instead of spending money on repairs, it would be better to build a new house in a more convenient location.
A new house?
Michael is getting older, and it's good that he only got injured last time, but we never know what will happen. So let's make the house barrier-free so we won't have trouble if care is needed.
I see.
We can even put Michael's room in the middle so everyone can take care of him easily.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea.
Right, so it's settled then. And Michael, about the cost?
If it's a house for all of us, I'll take care of it. Talk to Mr. Jones about the money.
Typical Michael. Thank you, we appreciate it. My mother-in-law smiled happily. It seems to me that they only flatter him when they want money. But if everyone takes care of my grandfather-in-law after moving to the new house, I thought there could be nothing better. Mr. Jones is the company's in-house counsel and also manages my grandfather-in-law's personal assets. My grandfather-in-law liked his character and made him in-house counsel, and it's been nearly 30 years. He is 58 now and the person my grandfather-in-law trusts the most. I've met him several times, and he seems to be a very honest person. He always cares about my grandfather-in-law's health, and sometimes I think he's more like a son than his real sons. Having such people around my grandfather-in-law makes me feel a little relieved. I wasn't informed about where or what kind of house was being built, but my mother-in-law seemed very cheerful, and the three of them were looking at interior design magazines and discussing various things, so it seemed to be going smoothly. Then, something unexpected happened. It was revealed that my grandfather-in-law had a debt of $1,820,000. Wait, what's this about $1,820,000? My grandfather-in-law had become a co-signer for a loan for a friend's company. But that company was in trouble, and the debt had become my grandfather-in-law's responsibility. Wait, they're not going to take the house that's under construction, are they?
Since the contract has already been completed, and as Patricia said, it's in the president's name, so it's fine.
My mother-in-law seemed relieved at those words. Oh, thank goodness, I'm glad we did it my way. Listening to that conversation, I learned for the first time that the house was in my father-in-law's name. Even though my grandfather-in-law had paid for it, putting it in my father-in-law's name seemed just like something my mother-in-law would do. I also wondered why they didn't think of giving up the house to help repay the debt. Hey, this debt is Michael's fault, and it has nothing to do with us or the company, right?
Well, it was signed in Michael's name.
Oh, good. Then there's no problem. I couldn't understand what was good about it. But since my grandfather-in-law didn't say anything during that conversation, I didn't intervene either. After all, it's not an amount I could handle. And a few days later, my grandfather-in-law's behavior began to change gradually. Grandpa, what would you like to eat for lunch?
Who are you calling Grandpa? I'm only 50. You have no right to call me that.
Huh?
Sorry, Emily. Right. I was lost in thought.
At first I thought he was just deep in thought, but when it happened repeatedly, I began to feel uneasy.
Patricia, what are you doing? Where's my meal?
Grandpa, I'm Emily. Patricia is your daughter-in-law. You ate your meal earlier.
I didn't eat. Are you trying to starve me?
I wondered if my grandfather-in-law's condition was triggered by the $1,820,000 debt. and seeing that none of his family members were trying to help him might have been a double shock. What can I do for him? I tried to take my grandfather-in-law to the hospital, but he refused to go. He might not want to admit that he might have dementia. I don't want to force him, but I can't do anything on my own. I consulted my husband, but he only replied that it had nothing to do with him. I can't rely on my mother-in-law either. So I thought my father-in-law was the only option.
Yeah, I heard from Patricia and Daniel. They think it might be dementia.
Can you go to the hospital with us?
But it's not that bad yet, right? If we go to the hospital, others will find out. My father having dementia?
There are good medications now that can slow the progression.
Well, there's no need to rush. Let's watch him a little longer. Emily is here, so it'll be fine, right?
I can't help but think how unreliable these people are. I can't depend on them. Grandpa, let's go to the hospital. Let's get you properly examined.
Who are you? Where are you planning to take me? You're up to no good.
I almost cry, thinking about how my once kind grandfather-in-law has become so stubborn. But my mother-in-law just laughs, amused. Even if he was the chairman, it's over for him now. But now everything, even the company, is all Christopher's. Patricia, Grandpa isn't completely unaware. He's listening to everything. He'll forget everything soon. He'll start wandering, dribbling. Just thinking about it gives me chills. He's nothing but a nuisance now. How can you say that? Grandpa has worked hard for the family all his life. My mother-in-law's words make me angry and sad. But my grandfather-in-law just smiles. See? This old man doesn't understand anything. Patricia! I'm furious that my mother-in-law's laughing in words. But soon, the new house will be ready. Things might change once we move there. Since it's a house that Grandpa built, the family might show some gratitude and be kind to him. I couldn't completely abandon that faint hope. And 2 months later, the house was finally built. For days, I had been forced to pack my in-laws' and husband's belongings, while my father-in-law's and my things were mostly untouched. Even when I tried to pack my things, my in-laws and husband kept giving me tasks, so I couldn't make any progress. But I thought it would be fine to move the small things later, since this house wasn't going away. On moving day, after moving most of the things, I went to call my father-in-law, but my husband said, "Ah, you and Grandpa can stay here." What?
You can stay in this house. We don't need any extra baggage in the new house. In other words, you and Grandpa will live here from now on, and I'll give you Grandpa's debt too.
Well, you can at least be a housekeeper.
Hey, let's go.
Yeah, I'm coming. Good luck with all the debt repayment and live in care. With those words, my in-laws cheerfully got into the car and left. I was stunned for a while. I couldn't immediately understand what had just happened. Were we just abandoned? And not just me, but my grandfather-in-law too. Only they would live in the new house? It took me a while to understand, because it was beyond my imagination that someone could do something so cruel. How should I explain this to my grandfather-in-law? I slowly returned to the back room. I don't mind taking care of my grandfather-in-law at all. That was my intention from the start. As I was about to timidly call out to him, who was sitting with his back to me, he seemed to sense my presence and turned around before I could speak.
Have they gone already?
My grandfather-in-law's expression, as he said that, looked completely different from the dazed look he had just months ago. To be frank, he seemed like a different person. I thought maybe a different symptom had emerged, but the next moment, my grandfather-in-law smiled. And then, his following words surprised me. As I was talking to my grandfather-in-law, Mr. Jones came.
Chairman, have you finished getting rid of the unnecessary staff? Yes, it's all done. Let's go, shall we?
Where are we going?
Of course, to the new house.
I left the house where I had been living, led by my grandfather-in-law, without understanding what was happening. The next month, countless calls came from my mother-in-law and husband. My grandfather-in-law said he wouldn't deal with them anymore, but I answered my husband's call because of the divorce.
Hey, Emily, is Grandpa with you? When I went to the old house, it was for sale. It's not worth $1,820,000, so you can't repay the debt. Is that why you did that?
What do you mean?
Put Grandpa on. Dad said he can't get in touch at all. That forgetful old man has done something outrageous.
I knew what he was talking about, but I wanted to hear what my husband would say.
Grandpa sold the company's stocks to the executive director. Thanks to that, the executive director became the largest shareholder. And a shareholders meeting and board meeting were held, and Dad was dismissed as president.
But the executive director is well liked, and maybe Grandpa thought he was better to hand over the company to.
The executive director must have deceived the senile old man into selling the stocks. This is invalid.
You seem to be misunderstanding something. But Grandpa doesn't have dementia. If anything, he seems more coherent than before.
What?
I, too, until that moving day, had seriously thought that my grandfather-in-law had dementia. It seems that my grandfather-in-law had been suspicious from the time my mother-in-law said she would build a house to live with him. So he devised a plan. He pretended to have dementia to see how my in-laws and husband would react. As expected, they showed their true colors one after another. In the end, they left my grandfather-in-law and me behind.
I struggled to hold back my laughter because everything went exactly as I expected,
my grandfather-in-law said. I was surprised, relieved, and a little conflicted.
To deceive the enemy, you must first deceive your allies.
He laughed. He seemed to have been getting regular updates on the company from the executive director and Mr. Jones. With my grandfather-in-law gone, my father-in-law and husband did as they pleased, self-righteous, completely ignoring the opinions of the employees, constant entertaining at the company's expense. He handed over the company to my father-in-law, but he was worried about the future, so he took this measure. In the end, he decided he couldn't entrust it to his son and left it to the executive director.
What about the $1,820,000 debt?
That's gone now. Indeed, my grandfather-in-law had been a guarantor for a friend's debt, but he also owned personal assets that exceeded that. After stepping back from the company's operations, he had invested in real estate and made a considerable profit. So there was no problem at all. But if I had said that, it was clear that my mother-in-law and husband would target it. That's why I only talked about the debt. The friend was the son of a benefactor who had helped my father-in-law when he was young. Moreover, since then, the countryside land that the son owned was going to be developed into a resort, and he was able to sell it at a high price, so there was no need to take on the debt.
You're kidding.
But more importantly, are you guys okay?
We're not okay. Both my father and I were denounced by the company. What should we do now?
Well, there's also the mortgage on the house.
What? What do you mean, the mortgage on the house?
Huh? Haven't you realized it yet?
The house money should have been all paid by Grandpa.
Maybe you don't remember what Grandpa said at that time. When my mother-in-law talked to my grandfather-in-law about the money, he had set the condition that if it's a house where everyone, including me, will live. In other words, if that wasn't the case, he wouldn't pay. Even if the house was in my father-in-law's name, my grandfather-in-law intended to pay if everyone was living together. That's just because you assumed Grandpa would pay and didn't look at the documents properly, right? Christopher signed without checking everything. It shows he really didn't have the qualities of a president."
"You're kidding."
Afterward, my parents-in-law ended up losing the house they had built because they couldn't pay the mortgage. Now they live in an old apartment over 50 years old and are struggling to pay off the unpaid loan. My mother-in-law and husband have been contacting me alternately, saying we should all live together, but that's impossible now. My grandfather-in-law has retired from his chairman position, and now he has bought an old house in the countryside and we are living together.
"Emily, you can go and live wherever you like freely. You don't have to worry about living expenses,"
my grandfather-in-law told me, but I chose to be with him. "If I'm not in the way, please let me be with you." When I said that, my grandfather-in-law's eyes welled up with tears. Thanks to Mr. Jones, the divorce was finalized and procedures were taken to exclude my former father-in-law and former husband from inheritance, and I became my grandfather-in-law's adopted daughter. If anything happens to my grandfather-in-law, who has become my father, I intend to take care of him until the end. Now the two of us enjoy working in the fields together. "Dad, look at this radish. It's big." In the pouring sunlight, warm moments flow. I wish for these days to continue even one day longer.